As people start to log in, I just want to welcome everybody. We're just going to give it like a minute or two and let people come on in. Let me just make sure we are all set up here. Welcome, everybody. We're just going to give it like a couple minutes. We're going to let people get a chance. I know it's right after work. Give people a chance to kind of roll in and get comfortable. We have a great discussion ready for you. We'll just start like maybe 2 minutes. Give people a chance to log on. But in the meanwhile, welcome. I hope everyone is having a great day. And the weekend's coming up. We're right there. We can taste it within our reach. And it is 5 o'clock, and 5 o'clock does not feel like 5 o'clock anymore. I would think we would all be used to daylight savings time, but I'm ready for bed almost. Like time to take it in. Yes, I do miss those long summer days. That's how it is for now. Welcome, some people logging in. My glasses with me, but I can see for the most part. But welcome. I just realized I didn't have my video on. I don't know how I turned my video off by mistake, but I'm here. I'm not just a voice.
I was curious. I was like, how did we lose you?
Right. It's touching a whole bunch of buttons. I should be very much a Zoom expert by now, but it's always something new.
No worries. It happens.
Zoom pros by now. I'm just so happy to have everyone join us. It's the end of the year is wrapping up. We're kind of slowing down. The holidays have just landed in our laps so quickly. So, I know for NAMIC New York, we only have, a couple more events to go, then we're closing the year out. So I always like the end of the year event where we can kind of wrap up all of our goals and our professional development and look forward to next year. So I pray that next year is a very good year for all of us. I know we've all been through a lot. So 2022, be good to us.
Agree. Totally agree with you. Here in Philly, we're doing the same thing, winding down and then getting ramped up because 2022 will be a big year for, I believe, everybody as we come back to what will be our new normal, because I doubt we will go back to it being the same ever again. But I definitely am happy to have this audience gathered here and looking forward to a robust discussion about how we can get some people some jobs and some new opportunities. And as always, it's great to partner with NAMIC New York.
Absolutely. The only incremental thing I would add to that is I wish I had both of your calendars because mine is not slowing down.
Mine is the opposite.
The complete opposite.
I was trying to be kind. Mine isn't slowing down either. It won't slow down to like the week between Christmas and New Year's, but I didn't want to ruin the rest of it.
Fair enough.
So we're going to get started. People will trickle in as they are able to, but I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is Radia Barnes, and I'm the president of the New York chapter of NAMIC. And NAMIC stands for the National Association for Multi-Ethnicity and Communications. We're the leading diversity organization for people of color, professional development organization for people of color in the communication space. And we put on events such as these throughout the year. We like to do panel events, fireside chats, networking events, workshops, and we love to partner with other organizations. I'm so happy about this partnership. What a great ERG. We also partner with business resource groups and other various companies, but this is something that I've been looking forward to. I love recruiting events. I think that it's so important to learn about different organizations, company culture, hiring practices. So I love these kind of behind the scenes events. So I want to thank all of the panelists here for lending their time and their insight.
Yes, and just to echo those sentiments, it's definitely been a very challenging few 18 months, 24 months, but we are definitely going to be stronger coming out of it than we were going in. And with that, NAMIC Philadelphia, as well as NAMIC other sister chapters, and especially New York, we've been dedicated to making sure that we're bringing you the content that matters, because in this time of quiet and stillness, you can really focus on what do I want to do next? Where do my passions truly lie? And we want to present you options for chasing that passion and finding that new opportunity, because the opportunities are there. I want to thank you guys for joining us. I want to welcome you all to this forum. And as Radia said, we're going to have a great evening together. So let's do this.
Yes, so we're going to turn it over to James Rothwell, who is the VP of Marketing at Comcast Advertising. Thank you so much, James. We're going to turn it over to you now.
Great. Thank you so much for the warm welcome, Radia and Dwayne. And thanks also to everyone for joining us today. And obviously to NAMIC, New York and Philadelphia for making this event possible. So yeah, as Radia said, I'm James Rothwell. I'm VP of Marketing at Comcast Advertising, which is both Freeware, which is an ad tech company, and Effective, which is a cable ad sales group as well. I'm excited to welcome all of you to a very unique opportunity, really. Today, we get to hear from some true premium video pros and to learn from and be inspired by their experiences, both professional and personal. I get the privilege of hosting a very prestigious group called the Freeware Council for Premium Video, which includes 25 TV and video companies, which span programmers, operators, digital pure plays, and we bring senior leaders together from those organizations on a regular basis to discuss the industry and how we can move it forward through education, influence, and advocacy. One of the tracks that I'm most proud of is the launch of a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, which focuses on underserved communities within the TV and advertising industry. And today we have members of that committee who are here to share their stories and help the audience understand more about the opportunities that exist in the thriving and dynamic ecosystem of TV and video advertising. If you have any questions, please submit them in the chat, and we'll take as many as we can at the end of our discussion. So let me introduce the panel. Let me start with Beth. So Beth Karate is an executive director at Cox Media, where she focuses on developing and enhancing best-in-class advertising solutions for local businesses. Beth, great to have you join us today.
Thank you so much. Thrilled to be here.
All right, next up is Anthony Green. He's Vice President at Gamut, a new generation digital advertising organization and part of the Cox Media Group. Anthony, welcome and thanks for being here.
Thank you, James. What a pleasure to be able to speak to this audience, and there's so much opportunity in advertising. Really excited to share with everybody today.
Awesome. Jermaine Roseman, Senior Director of Advanced Advertising Solutions at A&E Networks. Welcome, Jermaine.
Thank you for having me here. I'm really excited.
And last but not least, Mr. Misha Williams, Vice President of our 200-person plus global client services organization at Freeware, a Comcast company. Misha, thanks for joining us.
Hey, James, thanks for having me. Very excited to be here. Massive amount of opportunities to which I will share with you specifically about my organization as we are hiring.
Yes, we are. All right. Let's jump in. All right. I'm sure many in our audience would like to know how the members of this diverse group discovered and found a way into the industry that we work in. And I'm sure those pursuing or considering a career in ad tech, media, TV would appreciate any tips or words of wisdom you care to share based on your early experiences. So Beth, let's start with you. Share us a little bit about your background, how you came to be in this industry, and anything that you'd like to share with the group at this point.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. So I work for Cox Communications, which is the cable division of Cox Enterprises. And we're the major cable distributor in approximately 23 markets across the US. I prior to joining Cox almost 9 years ago, I worked for Comcast. So I was part of the organization that James leads today. And I spent 10 years, almost 10 years in cable ad sales, focused on advanced advertising. So I will say, the majority of my experience clearly is in the cable industry, but I really started out with a much more general education and background in communications. I studied at the College of Charleston in corporate communications, and then went to Georgia, go Dogs, and studied mass communications. And I loved the idea of being in advertising and public relations. And after a few years at an advertising agency, I realized I'd like to jump to the other side in sales. And really, I took almost a circuitous route. I mean, when I joined Comcast, now was it 19 years ago, digital advertising was a fairly new concept, especially in the cable world. And I was able to be part of a very small group of professionals that were interested in understanding how traditional media could sort of merge with digital media. And for me, it was really about taking advantage of that opportunity, seeing it as unique, and ultimately at the time I was young, and everyone thought, well, this is someone who should know a little more about digital than the rest of us. But it turned out to be a real learning experience for me. And I built on that experience after spending 10 years primarily focused on the sales side, and transitioned to Cox and saw an opportunity within the product space, which turned out to be kind of a perfect fit for me personally. And I've spent 9 years building out the digital product set and now the holistic product set for Cox. So kind of a long-winded answer, but it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, there's no linear path, right? But that's great to hear. All right, let's go to Jermaine. Jermaine, why don't you share a little bit more about your background and any words of wisdom for the group?
Yes, I graduated from Howard University with a degree in international business and marketing. I actually had a weird way into media. I started in supply chain, so working with industrial tool companies, setting up actually like actual buildings, like storefronts, and then moved into more of an e-commerce role. But I've always had this project management background, and I've always been interested in media, but I didn't quite know how I would get there. I moved to New York, had an opportunity with Martha Stewart, where I was a project manager in a digital front. So that's where I really started getting into media. And then they had this opportunity to work with this thing called Freeware. I had no idea, because I'm a supply chain guy, so I know process and how to get things done. But advertising, I was like, I don't know, but whatever, we'll figure it out. And I took on the opportunity to really redevelop their Freeware network, worked with like the Freeware team, and this was years ago. So I learned a lot about Freeware and digital advertising through that experience. Then I got an opportunity to work for NBC, and that's when I got into like real publishing and media there. Spent some time there working on their Television Everywhere product. Now I've been at A&E for about 5 years. I oversee advanced advertising solutions. And essentially, my team is really responsible for all of the different integrations that we have with our on-domain or our apps, as well as our off-domain partners. So that's like Cox, Comcast, Hulu, et cetera, like making sure that we can monetize that content anywhere it goes. But I tell anybody, if you want to get into media, the best way, in my opinion, is to go through project management, because it's one of those skill sets that everyone needs. And you can just kind of migrate and sell yourself on your previous skills. So if you worked with the internet, that means you worked in digital, right? And just use that to get closer and closer to where you need. And when you have that opportunity to work on like a Freeware project or a pure play digital project, learn as much as you can, speak to everyone that is working on that project with you to kind of soak up that information, and then put that on your LinkedIn. And literally that's how NBC contacted me, was through my LinkedIn. So as long as you kind of have a game plan of how you want to get there, eventually you'll do it. You're muted, James.
20 months in, still struggling to find that mute button. I thank you for those tips, because I think it's so relevant, not only for our industry, but I think all industries, right, that are growing and changing and dynamic in the way that ours is. Project management doesn't matter what you're doing. There are always going to be significant projects to take on, and I think that's certainly a great entry point for anyone thinking about this area of the world. Maisha, you're up on my screen, so I'm going to pick on you. Why don't you share a little bit more about your background?
Of course you are. Let's see, how much time do I have, James? So let's start at the beginning. Always the best place to begin. So my career actually began in the military. I was in for 8 years. Started out on an aircraft carrier working in combat air warfare. I was an engineer, and I had responsibility for encryption across all of the communication networks across our ship battle group. After my 8-year stint in the military, I obviously became a civilian and continued on with my career as an engineer. But then I discovered something very quickly about myself, in that while I do enjoy technology, I also enjoy varied challenges. So I cycled through a number of different functions, such as project management, sales, data warehousing, took on the challenge of launching companies such as consulting companies, which began my path to where I am today. Moved over into product, back into engineering, took on a role as a quota carrying salesperson, led sales teams. If you can understand my path up to this point, my core goal when I started my career was to be as well-rounded as I possibly could. That would be one of my recommendations to you. Say yes to the challenge. Do not allow yourself to become commoditized. Think of yourself as a product. You have to stay sharp and relevant in the industry. The way that I landed where I am right now, which is, as James mentioned at the start of this, I lead global client services for Freeware, the advanced advertising arm for Comcast Advertising. I landed here through consulting. One of my engagements had to do with partnering with an agency, an ad agency, and helping them figure out how to make their campaigns most effective. And that triggered a level of interest in me to where I decided that was my path, that is where I wanted to go. And that was a discrete path that I followed to get to where I am right now. So I would say my recommendations to you is become fluent in both business and technology. Those who can straddle both lines are desired anywhere. Master data. Without data, you're just another person with an opinion. Be willing to take on new challenges, and network. Learn from the people who are in the current roles that you're interested in, because it's always best to be able to understand the language in which the industry speaks that you're interested in. So get out there and explore. Thanks, James.
That's awesome. Thanks, Maisha. Thank you. All right, Anthony, you're up next. Tell us about your background and how you are where you are.
Thanks, James. Some of the things that the other panelists have said already, whether it be Beth or Jermaine and Maisha, such great points. I mean, I think as I get into my history, just things about being in management, understanding project management and networking are two things that are just so crucial, I think, when we think about jobs or people that we know and how we connect to new careers. So my career began, I was very fortunate. The last semester of school was an internship. And that's a great way, right, to get involved in a career initially anyways, through an internship, if those are possible. So my internship was at America Online, when that was really the only connection to the internet outside of, say, like CompuServe or something like that, when we were all connecting through dial-up modems. I was a graphic designer back then. Like Beth, I went to school for communications. So I had a general background in terms of understanding the history of communications and the value of communications between humans and the industry. And then over time, I got involved in, there was a really exciting time in the early 2000s in the startup world where a lot of just different types of technology startups were starting. Advertising was one of those. I was largely involved in mobile technology, working at startups, and one of our biggest clients was NBCU at the time. So doing things like creating mobile applications that could do vote to screen for things like Project Runway, or signing up for text message alerts for things like Notre Dame games or things like that. And that world in technology took on advertising pretty quickly. Pretty much any technology project found a way to monetize. And while mobile really started with smaller banner ads back at the time, a lot of it is full screen and advanced now. It was kind of a small step into the industry. And then video advertising really started. And that really sparked my interest, right? I felt like that was the future. I'm a child of television. It's something that I enjoyed growing up. I enjoyed media, and really getting into video advertising was a really exciting opportunity. I worked in more of the ad tech side, so just enabling advertising, being involved in partnerships. It was largely based in project management and partnerships, like Jermaine talked about. Really just getting basic skills down in terms of understanding how to arrange projects, how to work across groups of people. I feel like having the experience of being around a number of different types of individuals in the industry opens your eyes to understand that it isn't just a business function, it's a finance function, it's a marketing function. There are so many different types of majors out there that apply to advertising. I work with such a kind of well-rounded group of people every day who come from all different backgrounds. Maybe they were lawyers, maybe they had an honorable background like Misha did in the military, but just different people who had really great skills and essentially brought those to bear. And advertising welcomes them all, right? So current day, I work with Gamut. Gamut is part of Cox Media Group. It was formerly part of Cox Enterprises, the organization where Beth leads product. And on my side of the business, my responsibility is working with folks like Jermaine and his teammates on the business side, where I essentially do the deals with networks to sell advertising space. And that's in the local space. So my job largely is to strike all of those deals. Freeware is the technology that we all use. It's the leading technology for TV companies, and that's where we play. It's been a really exciting ride. It's the best time of my life in terms of a career and excitement and opportunity. And there's a lot of opportunities within our industry. Our company particularly has a number of roles, like I said, across disciplines, whether it be finance, marketing, business development, you pretty much can name it. And they also span from recent graduates to folks who've been in the industry for 20 years plus.
Thank you, Anthony. That was fantastic. I'm going to double click a little bit on some of the things you guys have touched on in a little bit. But I want to just take a moment to just reflect on how the world has changed for everyone in the last 20 months, but specifically within this industry. So I'm just going to ask a couple of you maybe to comment on sort of, how the industry has evolved since the pandemic and what that evolution has meant in terms of the skills, the personalities, the profiles this industry is looking for today and tomorrow. So Jermaine, let me hand that question over to you. What have you seen change in the last 20 months as it relates to the workforce, and the recruitment of talent into our industry?
First, I think since COVID, the digital aspect of TV has skyrocketed, right? People are watching television on smart TVs and are more comfortable than what they were in the past, which is great for our industry because now organizations are really investing and know that they have to do fast investments within digital. So it's growing and providing a lot of opportunity for folks. And because there's a kind of crunch on talent and we're looking for talent we're open to different types of folks who may not have a pure play digital Black background, but they have some important skill sets, right? The ability to navigate through ambiguity is one thing, right? Because TV media changes every day. And that's something that helps me, my teammates. That's one thing I ask of them, is to just be able to navigate. I know you might not know the answer, but can you get to step B, right? You know, you're at step A, let's get to step B, then we can figure out the rest from there. But I think if you're able to really show, especially the people that you're interviewing, that you have the passion and the drive to navigate through ambiguity, to fail fast, right? You are thinking of some great ideas, but you have to try them out. And your ability to fail fast and say, okay, it didn't work, but here's what we learned, so here's what we're going to do different next time, makes you a great asset for a company. And I think finally, really finding folks who have the ability to build relationships with people, because in my space, it's all about influential relationships. I have to talk to cable TV providers, and if A&E needs something to work on their platform, I have to influence them for them to put that on their roadmap, right? So that's kind of like sales, but not really. You just have to develop relationships with people and be comfortable asking for what you want and kind of showing them, here's why it's beneficial to you and your organization, and here's where it might help some other publishers. So I do that on a day-to-day basis when I'm talking to Cox or Comcast or whoever, to ensure that A&E can get their needs met to those partners. So it's really being flexible, being driven, and kind of doing the research before you go into those interviews to understand what's going on within that industry and particularly within that company. So the interviewer knows that you're interested in it and you have somewhat of a background and can at least get up to speed quickly, because that's really important within this space.
For sure. Maisha, let me also ask you this question. You know, how have you seen the industry evolving since the pandemic, and what's it meant for your team and the way you're thinking about recruiting talent into the organization?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I will, tag on a little bit to some of the recommendations that Jermaine just made about being willing to deal with ambiguity. One of the things that we look for in our industry specifically is people who are willing to come to where all the answers have not yet been figured out, because that is exactly what's happening within ad tech right now. Viewership is changing. The way that we all access content and consume that content is changing. If you think about how we've all interacted with technology and content over the past 20 months, that gives you an idea as to some of the challenges that media companies, agencies, brands are trying to figure out how to reach people. We all access content in a multitude of different ways: laptop, phone, connected TV. And that represents a challenge to those in the industry. How do brands deliver their marketing or brand messages to you when you are represented across multiple different devices? Now, within our team, we are helping those companies figure out how to accomplish that challenge. We, as an industry, do not have all of the answers figured out, but you have to be willing to be, as Jermaine just said, driven and focused and willing to help the company, the industry answer these yet as answered questions, because that's what it requires. If you are looking for a place to come where everything is defined in a box and it's steps A through Z, that's kind of not what ad tech is. So, just being honest. But what we're looking for, we have responsibility from a technology perspective. And as I said at the top of this, you have to also be able to link that to the business. Is a lot of people that we are recruiting right now, they do not necessarily come from advertising. There's some commonality and base technical skills, but what we tend to look for are those personality flags that will give us an indication as to, can this person deal with ambiguity? Are you willing to work hard and accept the challenges? Those things are what, tips the scale in your favor and allows us to be able to bring you within our teams. So I could sit here and say, yeah, you should have these languages, you should have this background, in programming. You should know these languages. You should understand how CTV works. You should understand why CTV is important. Yes, you can Google that and figure that stuff out. What I look for is a person's willingness to take on something new and be willing to help us figure out the answers that we have not yet figured out. That, for me, is the big thing.
Yeah, natural curiosity, I feel like, is a good way of summing that up, right?
Yeah.
People who want to figure stuff out, ask questions, poke holes, and get to those solutions in a collaborative way, for sure. Thank you, Maisha. Appreciate that. So lots to think about there, and but I'd love to just maybe go kind of line by line or panelist by panelist here, and pose a question for each of you. Beth, let's start with you. You talked a little bit about your path and your move from sales to product management and finding your sort of sweet spot, if you like. What did you take from that journey, and maybe some additional details about that you could share with today's attendees interested in the world of TV and technology?
Yeah, I was reflecting on that a bit this morning, thinking that I would be getting the privilege of talking to this audience. And I will say, you touched on it, in summarizing my answer, which is there wasn't a direct path. And I think if I were to talk to my younger self, I would say, you can have a plan. And by the way, you should have a plan. I think it's important to know what you think is, your career path and what the steps are, but be open to the idea that it may not be linear. You may take a few turns along the way and maybe even go backwards a bit at times to get to where you're going. I think the biggest learning for me was to really get sharp at the things that I was good at, naturally good at. So in particular, in my time at Cox, I've been able to do a lot of leadership development work. And that's helped me to sort of break down the traits that I have naturally that make me, really hopefully very good at my job and invest more time in getting even better. So there are a lot of books around exploring your strengths, and I think understanding what they were, learning how to, get better at it and how to speak to them. And also understanding what I'm not good at. And when I'm in the process of hiring, finding individuals that can help build out a more complete team and can lean into the areas that maybe aren't my particular strengths. I think there was a point made earlier that, talked about the fact that, ad tech is not any one single skill set. And I would really like to emphasize that, because I think the idea behind it is, okay, we ultimately we all have different backgrounds, but we have a similar skill set. And the answer is actually not at all. I look to hire people with engineering backgrounds and technology backgrounds and finance backgrounds, and the list goes on, because we need each of those functions to be successful as an organization. And the point you just made, James, is spot on, which is it's all about what you're naturally curious about. I think many people find media interesting, but maybe they don't believe that they fit in because they don't have, they didn't study communications in school, by way of example. Look, we need the smartest finance folks in the room to be successful. We really do. We need engineers, we need programmers, the content creators, the list goes on and on and on. So to me, it's more about are you curious about this industry? Do you think that what we do is interesting holistically? And if so, come join us. We're having a great time.
Yes, we are. Thank you, Beth. That's great. Anthony, you're up next. And I think it sort of dovetails nicely with what Beth was just saying. Your career spanned multiple disciplines: interface design, business development, partnership management, among other things. Many people pursue similarly eclectic paths as they move towards their futures and through their careers. So do you have any guidance or good news maybe for about the ad tech industry for those individuals who maybe haven't figured out their major or their career path just yet, or pursuing independent studies? considering or perhaps considering a first or next career change?
Yeah, I think something that Beth and both Misha touched on is, with challenge comes opportunity. And advertising is just, and media in general, that curiosity about media, if you're curious about media in general, what finances media is advertising, right? And media is so large. There's so many opportunities within advertising. I think that's the big thing, not just the different careers that Beth really touched on thoughtfully, but just overall understanding that there's many touch points too, and there's many levels. So as she said earlier, some things might feel like a step back, but with that curiosity and with that challenge and opportunity, what I really found in advertising is it wasn't a one size fits all. So that didn't even mean that my first media or advertising job was the right one or the right path, as you mentioned in media. And what I really found to kind of find that next opportunity or find my place where I felt like I could thrive the most was paying a lot of attention to the coworkers around me. Obviously, we all build strong teams with the people that we're around. And sometimes we recognize that roles that other people have is where we want to be. It doesn't mean that that's exactly what we can do today. But some of the roles that I found were simply asking professionals that I worked with or people, even at companies that I was just interested in, cold reaching out to them. Obviously, people that I knew at my existing companies, but LinkedIn obviously is a great tool, or networking through great groups like NAMIC, right? And kind of saying, hey, I really want to get into this specific role. I have this background, but I really want to get into this, and asking people specifically, how did they do it? Or what are the challenges? Or based on what you think it's going to be, asking them what it is and what are the steps to get there. So I think people are always when somebody comes to me with a question or says, hey, I like what you're doing, are there opportunities there? That's exciting for the person that gets approached and really gets to lend some insight. So I would say, jump for those challenges. And even if you don't know what you want at first, if you think about specific companies or specific roles, reach out to individuals in those roles, whether you can connect through a friend, like I said, in LinkedIn, you'll see people who you're connected to through other people, but people who've reached out to me, cold, students and that type of stuff as well. We all want the best and brightest to work with us, and we're here to listen, and we want to help people help our organizations grow.
That's great. Thank you, Anthony. I just want to remind anyone on the call, if you want to throw any Q&A, any questions into the chat, please do so. We'll have some time after Jermaine and Misha answer their final questions. So please feel free to share any questions that are on your mind. So Jermaine, let's turn to you. You've managed and directed product strategies for some time. What can you share about that particular focus with those who are or could or should be interested in our industry? Maybe just a little bit more on that project management side, but just anything more that sort of feels like the appropriate tips to share with the group.
I think that in a product management role, it's kind of both, right? There's the project management side of it, which is getting the ball down the field. Like, it's literally your job as a project manager, like executing what the strategy is. The product side is more of the strategy behind it. So that, just to give everybody a basic understanding of product management, essentially you're responsible for creating products that meets their customers' needs, but also satisfies the business requirements or whatever your business is trying to do. So in my space would be, we're a TV company. So within this TV company, my core job is to ensure that I can maintain viewership throughout all the different ad breaks. So Anthony, because if we ever deal with Anthony, his ads can come through as well, right? So we can monetize our content the way we need to, but us also keep in mind my main customer is going to be the viewer, and I have to satisfy them to ensure that they don't fall off because it's too much of an ad load. There's multiple ways to do that. One of the main ways we do that is through data, understanding what our viewership looks like, right? Understanding where people are falling off, and using that data to help me make decisions, because most of my job is prioritizing competing demands or requirements. So how do I use that data to help me make the best decision for our viewers as well as our company, so everyone has a great experience through that? And if you're interested in product management, first, read up as much as you can on the industry. So there's a lot of free places where you can find information. Ad Exchanger, the IAB, those are great resources, especially if you don't have a ad tech or even like an ad trafficking background. You can understand. They have some really good articles that explain basic topics. Like, I still read those articles today because it changes so fast. I'll have some of my programmatic team come and say, hey, have you heard about this? And I'm like, I don't know what that is. So I get on the Google, figure it out. The next meeting, I'm prepared and say, okay, here's my position on this, and here's what I think we should do. So first, read up on ad tech or the industry that you want to get in. Second, from a product perspective, understand that you have to make hard decisions. You have to prioritize, build relationships, but also I've always been like a visionary type person. So I always wanted to build and create or make things better. So I'll watch an ad experience on TV and I'm like, oh, this is horrible. I wonder if they could make these changes. So if you ever had thoughts while you were watching something using Instagram, using any type of product, and you have your own position on things that you can improve on it, you might have some passion, and product management might be good for you. So product management is vast. There's multiple things you can work on, like owned and operated, like pure technology, or you can work on the advertising side, but you have to be flexible, develop relationships, and really lean into data and do your research, so you can make the best decisions for your organization.
Great, thank you, Jermaine. I think your point about using trade press and other sort of outlets to get more knowledge, and I think it was Maisha earlier who made a great point about learning the language of the industry. For anyone who wants to join, is such a good one. I think I'd add also Digiday does a series called WTF is and ... and then some sort of complicated thing that sort of started to take off within our industry. Sort of slightly irreverent look at some of the things that sort of keep us up at night, but that's another source, I think, of information. So Maisha, let's bring it home before we do a little Q&A from the group. But obviously your background is incredibly diverse, and you've obviously helped advertising and media companies leverage disruptive technologies such as cloud computing and done many other things. But as relevant technologies, content, viewer behaviors, and buyer journeys evolve, how can current and prospective industry participants prepare for the future, maybe beyond just learning the language?
I laughed at you and I did it myself. I was on mute. All right,
Yeah.
so
There you go.
a lot of that was touched on by Anthony and Jermaine, as far as making recommendations on, the type of industry rags or industry magazines and books and whatnot and societies that you can join and learn. Reaching out to people who are currently in the space and asking for their expertise. And everyone that I've worked with in this industry segment are always willing to tell you about what they do day to day. So that is a really good way to start. One of the ways in which I approached it, and I know that this is probably not a way that everyone can follow, but I had such a passion for TV advertising, really understanding what it took to get to where I wanted to be. I actually started a company in this space, learning the technology, mastering it, learning from folks who were already experts in the space. I ultimately sold that company and decided to come and work at Freeware after I sold that company. But the point that I'm making is there are already experts out in the market, in our industry. You can learn from them. You can connect with them. There are free resources that you can gain access to, as I mentioned before, learn the language of our industry. But if you're looking for jobs to start, I would say there are a ton of opportunities right now because the industry is moving so quickly, and we are trying to catch up to the needs of the market and our customers. You can find an opportunity in any one of the companies represented on this call. Pursue the function that you have the most interest in. But once you're in that function, yes, definitely master your job of the day. But then be curious. Go in and spend time with other functions in the company where you land. Identify a person who is doing a role that you think you're interested in. Extract from that person's job description, LinkedIn profile, the things that seem to serve as the foundations to their roles, and then begin to ask about those capabilities, about those skill sets, and learn them. And that's effectively what I did. I saw people working at various companies that I understood from name recognition. I saw titles that I thought were interested. I looked at their profile to understand the makeup of their jobs, and then I started to dig in and learn. And that is effectively how I got to the job where I am today. Now, yes, I have a deep foundational knowledge in technologies in various industries and business segments, but the core recommendations are the same. Go and explore what you're interested in, make contacts with the people who are doing the job, try to get an understanding as to the basic components of that job, and then either make a person-to-person connection and begin to explore, or as Jermaine said, use the Google. It's a lot of information out there. So those are my recommendations. Oh, you're on mute, James.
Wow. Still at it. All right. Thank you, Maisha. That was great. All right. We're coming to the end of our session here. So let me just see if there's any questions we might explore here. There's one I wanted to ask you. Maybe we'll just pick on one person for this one. Let's pick on Jermaine for this one. What do panelists think, or what do you think will be the hot button issues, challenges, maybe even opportunities in ad tech in the coming year?
Oh, legal, because the industry's moves much faster than the government, but the government will always somewhat catch up. And right now there's CCPA, which is a California law, but there's a bunch of other states that have similar laws on the books. And as a publisher, we have to figure out how to navigate that because there's no national law. So on my roadmap for this year is like, how do we prepare ourselves for the future? But I think legal is the biggest challenge right now. Or not challenge, it's the biggest unknown that we have because we don't know what the legislators are going to do, but we do know that local governments are enacting their own laws. So it makes it very difficult for publishers, distributors to manage data effectively because California has one law, Nevada has another law. I think Massachusetts might be having a law, but if they don't all say the same thing, how do I manage a national footprint, right? So that's going to be the biggest. And I think that's also, if you're interested in like understanding how technology can solve some of those problems, that's a hot area to get into. It's pretty young. It's a young area, but it's going to grow and it will always be there. So I think that's another opportunity for folks to look and get ahead while there's just some folks in legal, they don't know the technology side. So if you can find a way to merge both, or at least to understand the technology enough to be able to communicate it to the legal team, then you have a nice career ahead of you.
Yeah, obviously privacy will continue to evolve, the laws around that, and basically the future of identity online and in other media environments is always going to be a hot topic. That will never go away. So I think you're absolutely spot on there, Jermaine. Someone asked the question, are there any internship or volunteer opportunities worth pursuing within the industry? Beth, I think Cox has a pretty robust internship program. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, sure. I can speak to it briefly, and then I'll commit to sharing more information after the call if that's fair.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So Cox I was not fortunate enough to intern for Cox because it postdates me, but I have had several interns work for me and with me as part of the program, and it's a paid internship program. I'll have to get back to you on when the applications and such are due, but they're in almost every major functional area, like we spoke to earlier. So you don't have to particularly be interested in advertising to be an intern at Cox, although we'd love to have you. Yeah, when we go through an application process, we pay our interns and pay them well. In addition to the functional work that they do within the company, they get approximately a quarter of their time is spent in overall professional development, which I think pays dividends over time. They learn, many different soft skills as well as the functional skills, including things like presentation skills, public speaking skills, project management skills, depending on what area they're in. And generally, we do a good job of preparing our interns for the workforce, and we hire a good bit of them.
Great, thank you, Beth. Appreciate that. Certainly, it's worth pursuing. I know there are other organizations within our council and within this group that also offer internships. So definitely worth pursuing those as well. I want to say thank you to our panelists, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I'm going to start wrapping things up here. But Beth, Anthony, Jermaine, and Maisha, thank you so much for taking some time out today and sharing your stories and information with this group. So I really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you to all the panelists, our esteemed moderator, and all of our attendees. We really do appreciate it. What a great discussion. Thank you.
So Radia, I do have one more thing I wanted to just share with the group, if that's okay. We'd like to leave the members with an opportunity. And Lee, I don't know whether we can bring up a slide here, but the Freeware Council has compiled a list of priority jobs that our respective companies are hiring for right now. And so you can get the list at the link on the screen and reach out to our group with any questions you have about workplace culture, about applications, and more via email. So that's what we wanted to leave you with today. And we want to share that more broadly with NAMIC members and other members of our community. So that is a very robust and hopefully living, breathing document that you'll be able to access on an ongoing basis. So thank you for all the time. Thank you all for the time today. We really appreciate it on a Thursday afternoon. And again, thank you to all the panelists and participants. And on behalf of Freeware Council and for Premium Video, and obviously our partners at NAMIC, thanks for being with us today. All right, back to you, Radia. Thank you.
Have a great night, everyone. Thank you. Be safe and enjoy the rest of your week.